G'day, freedom lovers. How are we today? Hope you're feeling a bit better than I am. You'll have to forgive the raspy voice. I've spent most of the night chucking me guts out. So, as a result, the throat's not too flush. I've got a bucket beside me and I've been keeping that dunny seat relatively warm. So, yeah, I'm having all sorts of fun. But the show must go on, and that's the benefit of doing this the way we do it. Is I can be as sick as a dog here and not make anybody else sick in the process. So, how is everybody going today? We've got a few people lobbing in. Wayno was here an hour early. How's that for dedication? Apparently, his missus tells him that all the time, and took him an hour to come back from that comment, which is very interesting. Is Wayno still there? Has he gone AWOL 10 minutes before the show started? Interesting. All right. G'day, Robin. How are you? Yeah, I've been having fun, eh? So I'm not sure if it's a stomach bug or if it was the juice that I drank yesterday morning that was, several days out of date, but it's okay. I'll live. Could be a lot worse. G'day, $2 all the way from Bundaberg. Love it, mate. Love it. Awesome. All right. I might just let a few more people pop in and take the time to thank all the Patreons. G'day, Dinaville. Melissa, how are you? Is the title misspelt intentionally or is this a scam? Well, it's probably just misspelt because I'm feeling a bit under the weather and I'm not sure which part I misspelt, but it's all good. That's how crook I am. I can't even figure out what part I misspelt. I'm looking at it right now going, it looks victim. I don't know. Is it supposed to be you? Spelling was never my strong point. I'm sure I've mentioned this a few times. Anyway, g'day, Martin, all the way from Sydney. Awesome. So, yeah, big thanks to the Patreons who, keep the bank balance somewhat floating. By all means, look at the description and jump on and become a Patreon too, because I look forward to the day where I can do this more as a full-time thing, as opposed to just dropping in and out when I get the chance. But today, I think we might just move straight along and introduce our first guest. We've got two guests on today. We're going to start with Karl here, who has a rather horrific tale to tell about the life in North Queensland, Queensland as a whole, as I look at the crime statistics today. And this is the reality of, being soft on crime, one might say, or perhaps just being so inadequate at, your job that you can't control the population. But anyway, coming on right now, we have Karl. How are you, mate?
Awesome, mate. Thanks for having me here, buddy. And thanks to all the patrons that are supporting buddy here, because not only are you supporting this awesome bloke who's able to give voice to people who are usually stepped on in the limelight, but you're also supporting the reason why I am trying to be so loud, which is supporting those victims that don't have a voice. I am just one statistic, and how horrific my story is only just a pinch in the broad spectrum, which is all the victims as a whole that are struggling in the community that don't have a voice. And given the circumstances with what happened to me, it wasn't until I saw everybody holding up signs of lost loved ones and everything that's happened to these people made me realize that the crime that's happening isn't just about getting better insurance when your vehicle's stolen. It's the real reality that our assets are being used as weapons and people are dying from this lack of weak legislation, weak laws, and I call hollow politics.
It's disgraceful. So perhaps we might start with your personal experience there, man. By the way, it's good to see you looking a lot better because the last time I seen you, you're a bit worse for wear.
Yeah.
Good to see that you've made a relatively good recovery there, but I'm sure there's, scars that we can't see.
Yeah.
Perhaps you'd like to share your tale of exactly what happened to you, mate.
Yeah, so it was 24th of October last year, nearly midnight. My partner at the time, I was picking her up, and I thought the best thing would be to pick her up on the motorbike. I felt safe in Townsville. I heard a little bit about the youth crime, and I thought the best thing would be take her out at midnight, stars up in the sky, hair blonde in the breeze. Cruising down the road on Riverway Drive, and I see a white Nissan Navara come out of the fuel station pretty abruptly. And as sort of your night owl kids, the ones that drink Red Bulls in the middle of the night and show their hot air filters inside their vehicles. And anyway, so didn't even think. cruising down the road. They were on the far left lane, so I occupied the far right lane, just giving a bit of a gap. And then as I continued forward, they began to slow down. Didn't think anything of it. And then all of a sudden, they started turning into me, and I applied the brakes as best as I could. I got jammed between the front wheel, and luckily I hit those brakes, otherwise I'd have been right on that bull bar. And the front wheel went under, and I was thrown from my bike. My leg was caught between the bike and the car, and I rapidly rolled on the ground, come to, and they were all getting out of the car. There was about 8 of them. One stopped, and I think he was with a mate. I could barely see him. And at first, I was screaming for help in absolute agony, and I was screaming, "Help me! Help me! Help me!" And then I stopped because in the army we do that quite a lot. As I am in the Defence Force, I'm getting medically discharged now because of it. But yeah, then I actually screamed for assistance, and they were standing there and they made fun of me, laughed at me, and in the lines of told me to F off, and then left. And yeah, I was left in the middle of the road on Riverway Drive. My leg was open. I could see a hole in my leg. I didn't know where my bone was. I didn't know it was protruding on the other side because of adrenaline. I was trying to pick myself up so I could get out of the road, but I couldn't even contract my abdomens because of my hypertrophy, because I hit them clean at 70 k's an hour, and just immediately thrown to the ground. And I traveled about 4 lanes across, just rolling on the ground rapidly. And yeah, and then luckily the first person on the scene was a nurse. She was able to help, assist, and really help me out there. And then
how long were you there before somebody came to your aid, mate?
Well, at the time, I thought it was 15 minutes. Hey, like I believed it was 15 minutes, but looking at the video, it was only 2.5 minutes before somebody came. There was actually,
Okay.
and I did see there was another vehicle that passed as well, and they didn't stop.
Mm.
But given the limelight, they saw 8 people running out of that vehicle. So, you know, what are you going to do, you know, if they decide to go steal your vehicle? So I don't
Yeah.
blame that person for not stopping, you know. But no, yeah, I was in a wheelchair because of it. And yeah, in hospital, I had to get an X-fix, just straighten up my bone first. And then after that, we had to go straight into surgery because there was this rally happening, and then I was able to give the story. And that's when remember for the Caddis party, Nick D'Amato came in, and he was good. He was really good. He came to me and he said, "What do you want to achieve?" He wasn't like, "Hey, I'm sponsored by, you know, whoever, let's take a photo." And I won't name individuals, but yeah.
All right, yeah.
But
So how long were you in hospital before Nick approached you?
it was almost 24 hours. So
Yeah.
yeah. He was pretty quick. He was pretty much straight on. And I think the biggest one was because I was under like heavy medication, and I was pretty much incoherent for a lot of the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine it'd be pretty painful going through all that.
Yeah. No, it was extremely painful. And
there was
no, sorry, yeah, you go.
You go, mate.
Well, no, I was just going to react on that pain, and it was extremely painful. I couldn't get comfortable, and I was consistently taking heavy medication. And when I went into the court, I was reminded that of that pain that I went through, and having to be reliant on this heavy medication, and how much cognitively that just messed with me. So it wasn't just the physical injuries, but also the mental injury that came from it as well.
Yeah. So as time progresses, Clinton Hawks put on the crime rally, you know, in honor of Anastasia Palaszczuk, or piece of shit as I like to call her, turning up to the Cowboys stadium there. You know, in some sort of a vain effort to, you know, get some solutions, because clearly the Labor Party was out of juice. There was no more left in the tank. Some of the words that were being said at that rally there. Your picked up by the Katter Party guys and brought to the rally. And I think it's probably a good time to sort of cut to the fail of the week, number 2. Those who have been watching us for a while will have seen this, but it's very relevant. So sit back for a couple of minutes here and let's have a look at what transpired next. Fail of the week. Welcome to Fail of the Week, and this week we've got Aaron Harper as an epic fail. You know, sometimes I think maybe I'm not going to be able to keep doing this week after week, but some people just seem to make it easy for me. Let's have a look at why he's a fail.
Oh, yeah, okay, get it all out now. Get your abuse out now. Righto. When you actually want to hear from me, I'll start. So, do you actually want to hear what we're doing or not? Well, I'll wait until you're finished and then I'll speak. Are you done? Do you want me to speak or not? Or I can just walk away. I'll get it off your chest. So, are we going to listen or not?
So as you can see at this week's crime rally, he wasn't exactly well received, but the icing on the cake was when he said this.
Have a little bit of respect. Well, you called me here, so I'm either going to bloody speak or I'm not. Yes, no? I bet you if I walked around, half of you are bloody LNP anyway. I'll rent a crowd.
As you can see, it's not exactly the nicest way to treat people who are victims of crime and are definitely concerned and are asking to be heard. You seem to have failed on that element because you just keep asking people, will you listen to me? I think we're done listening to you. Maybe you need to listen to the people. Here's some people you didn't listen to that emphasise the point.
I and my daughter were a victim of crime. My daughter's car was stolen back in 2013, so that's 10 years ago. In all these years, nothing's changed. Nobody's listened. But I'm trying to get appointments to see these pollies. They refuse to see you. They don't want to hear what you're saying.
Tell us about what you've been seeing on your security cameras.
Since the juvenile residential homes have infected Annandale, as multiple ones of them, crime has gone through the roof. These kids dance in front of our cameras on the street. They line up 4 stolen cars in a row because they know we've got cameras.
Have you taken any of this up with Les Walker?
Les Walker cooks a great sausage. We went home and still don't feel safe in our homes.
So a couple of sausages is not going to buy some happiness in this case?
It's not going to stop our elderly from being home invaded and assaulted in their own homes.
We've had people killed on the roads. We've got a young bloke who's had a compound fracture because they used a vehicle to knock him off his bike.
It was everything that I thought and knew in my heart, being in that hospital bed when everybody connected to me, and how quickly and rapidly people came to me with all the information, support, as well as the Townsville Bulletin, rapidly changing the story to get that perspective of it was intent. They were malicious. They striked me. They waited for the opportunity to target and hit me, and they have no regard or remorse whatsoever. To have that crowd there stand made me believe the very thing that I'm talking about is the Australian spirit, the community. The very community that I stand here to go, this is something that we should all be in support of, our freedoms.
I bet you if I walked around, half of you are bloody LNP anyway. I'll rent a crowd.
Well, that concludes this week's Fail of the Week. Stay tuned for next week's winner. So, yeah, that was Fail of the Week not long after that transpired, man. So there's probably a bit in there that you haven't seen before, and I've got plenty of other footage you're welcome to, get a copy of too, mate. Including the whole statement and all that sort of stuff, because I know that having worked for the mainstream media, they'll only have archived what they put in the story.
Yeah, and that's exactly it, eh? And just seeing that again, just reiterating the failure of how to connect to the people is beyond a joke. And it just constantly reminds me of being in a situation that there's a failure and it's a multifaceted failure, and it just comes down to, if he has the ability to speak on a platform in front of those people like that with complete disregard, that makes me feel like he's wearing a suit of impenetrable armor. And that's why I say hollow politics, because if they're sitting there jumping in the light, so this week it's victim of crime, next week it could be murder, next week this, they step in that limelight, now they're filled. So all they do is they start talking about this relevant media information. They can say whatever they want, and then the remorse starts coming in. They start to act on legislation as it becomes to roll into election. They're not changing anything now because they don't want to be held to any of the legislation that they're changing. So if we're sitting here with a very real issue, which is youth crime, which is detention as a last result is destroying everything, we need to remove that. We can use emergency legislation. Nobody's going to do it because they're afraid. Because if they change that legislation, they're acted upon it, and then they can be attacked for that change of legislation.
It's maddening. So I believe there was an article on, I could probably bring it up if I have to, but not long after that, you know, you obviously got wind of being called part of the renter crowd. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's just that blatant disregard. And it just goes again. It's like, to be that type of person and to think that you have the ability to say that tells me that you think that you're invincible, that you have something that is above people, and you have a complete disregard. And like, well, the psychological aspect of that individual who goes through that, like, would be teetering narcissistic. So I could go on for a while about the individuality of that person, but it's just not correct. And it goes against all the people that have lost lives, lost loved ones, lost family, that have lost so much, and then they're just stepped on, completely disregarded. And then how do you think, like, we're all here as Australians, how are you going to think, you know, we don't have a voice, we're completely disregarded in front of the people that we elected? How are we meant to support the system? How are we meant to support that there is going to be change? You know what I mean? Like, the very people that we did elect, like, are sitting there going, you're a renter crowd. Like, we don't care about you. You have to have respect for me because you wanted me to be out here. Like, shut up and listen to what I have to say. Exactly. You know, well, elected by the people for the people. I don't see that anymore.
No, and particularly with parties such as the Labor Party, it seems like you can't work with them. You can only work for them.
And that's exactly it. You know, they've got control of the power right now.
And we're seeing it all over because, I mean, the crime thing's pretty horrible. And, like, if I bring this screen up here, we can have a look at our current crime statistics, which, you know, I think is very relevant to what's going on at the moment. I mean, as you can see, it absolutely skyrocketed last year, 47,783 offences. Now, the numbers do seem to be coming down a little bit this year. We're in the 8th month and we're only at 22,000, but even still, that's a bloody hell of a lot of crime for a small town with a population of 200,000 people. I mean, that's 10% of the population. You know, if we were to average it out, one crime per person, 10% of the population has already been done over.
Yeah, exactly that. Well, that drastic change actually came from us being able to speak out and then go into Brisbane and make some changes. And one of the ones was the fat crime. So traditionally, these youth criminals, if they went, we stole a car, driving without due care, and then they killed somebody, or we'll say grievous bodily harm, they would pick the worst one, and that's what they would be charged for. Now, and that's where we see that drop is because we were able to change that legislation, and now they get stacked punishment. That's how we saw that drop. And that is just from being able to speak about it, so being on platforms like this and then forcing them to swallow what we're feeding them.
Have a good hard listen, because on Facebook, good old Aaron's there claiming all the glory, you know.
Yeah.
You know, he's there boasting about, you know, the crimes come down, but, you know, even as you look at it, if we were to roll back just 10 years ago, 28,000 for the entire year. 10,
yeah.
You know, here we are 10 years later. We're in the 8th month. We're at 22,564 offences committed here in Townsville. It's still not a good statistic. You know, even if we go back just 5 years ago, 34,000, we're still well and truly on our way to seeing these kind of numbers here again. Yeah. And we all know that, you know, once we get closer to silly season, things tend to go up quite a bit. So
yeah, and that's exactly it. And
it's not isolated. We've got, you know, the overall Queensland statistics have been relatively high. Overall, the entire state is suffering some serious issues over the last couple of years. You know, do we have psychological problems brought forth by, you know, the actions of the lockdowns and all that? Is this psychological trauma being enacted, you know, or is it just a, you know, blatant disregard for the law because the law's too soft, you know? Even in Cairns, things are still looking pretty high there too, you know, and they're well and truly on their way. 307,000 offences. Wow, 608 offences there. Wow, like that's just nuts. Oh, sorry, that's all the Queensland. Sorry, that was Cairns. So that's Cairns 22,000. So Kansas, you know, their peak in 2023 was half of what we had.
Yeah.
Last year. Like we had twice the amount of crime as Cairns. Like that's full on. But yeah, like the overall crime statistics in Queensland, wow, that's huge. Yeah, and you can see that's generally on the up. It's not, you know, you take 2017, you look at 2020, it's still more, you know, even though we've had a bit of a dip here, it's still more than it was in previous years, you know, it's on the up. So we'll see what it looks like at the end of the year. Like at the moment, we're sort of looking about halfway to, you know, achieving last year's sort of figures. But yeah, it's not good, man. It's not good.
Oh, it's exactly that. And it's analyzing that information and realizing what it actually means. Like we can have a look at that crime, but what it completely details is the laws that impose that allow reoffenders to reoffend. And we saw that drop purely because all we changed was one thing, and that was stacked crimes, which means that they're getting put away for a longer period of time. So that removes them from the ability to reoffend. But the biggest issue right now is we've got reoffenders, and that's what we're tackling. Yeah. And I can, from prime example, I sat in the courtroom and I'm on that statistic now, you know what I mean? Like the bloke who hit me, he got a conditional release order after hitting me. Right. Yeah. So just for he had multiple sentences. Just for the sentence for me, for gross bodily harm, it should have been seven, I believe it was 7 years detention. They said, okay, nah, and they said special youth treatment. And I watched his eyes line up when he had the word special. Yeah. And then they're like, it's 15 months. However, we're going to waive that for a conditional release order. So you get let back out into the community. Yeah, so he got let straight back
he was out the next day.
Out the next day.
Fuck.
Yeah, so he breached an order and then was put into detention for breaching an order. So through the pre-sentencing procedure for about 10 to 8 months, he was in detention because he breached an order. And then, he was given another conditional release order. However, it's funny because prior to this, so he got done for gross bodily harm, driving a stolen vehicle without a license and a bunch of other things. And basically, it was a mirror image of that. He was charged for only 23 hours prior to hitting me. 23 hours prior to hitting me, he was on another conditional release order. And then he left the court. It didn't even take effect because it takes a few days to take effect for that order. And then he stole a car and ran over me. 23 hours leaving the court. Yeah, and then so my court date was on a Friday. And then so he's not going to have resi care till Monday. So he's out in Kelso doing his own thing, free in the world to do whatever he wants. Okay. And it's completely because I watched the judge. Their hands are tied, so it's not up to the judges to change the legislation. But their hands are tied, and quite literally, it's because they had to go. Well, detention in the legislation, detention is a last resort. So they had to give all viable options, and this person had pages, and I'm talking double-digit pages of repeat offences of breach of probation, bail, destroying CROs, conditional release orders. Pages. So this is the very, like, he was the linchpin of repeat offender. And it's the weak legislation, the weak laws that says, you know, how do we tackle this? Detention of last resort, get out of here. The other one that I think, they're getting put into resi care homes.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry.
At what point do we reach the last resort? Like, where is the last resort? Is it on a tropical island somewhere, never to be seen? You know, like, at what point do we reach? Hang on, this guy's gone too far. Like, I mean, you know, grievous bodily harm. It seems relatively intentional. He's left you on the side of the street. You know, I have to ask, like, while you're there, and then you know you're screaming for help, and he basically tells you to F off. Are you thinking, Streak, this guy could finish me off right here and then?
Well, that's a very good question, because that was one of the things that I thought about when I was yelling, and I actually paused a bit before I continued to retort. Was there's 8 of them? I didn't know how many there was because I wasn't in the state of calculating. They could have just started stepping on me. They could have done anything. Like inside of the vehicles that we find, there's needles because they shoot up meth. Who's given them meth? As well as like weapons. We're talking like tomahawks, knives, machetes, everything. You know. and
Yeah.
they get charged for murder. They get conditional release orders. They are very aware of how the law is enabling them to continue to do what they do,
Yeah.
which is criminal behavior. And you talk about, what do we do, tropical islands? I was so convoluted in anger, and I was like actively wanting to go after these people. Like, okay, what do
Yeah, I
I
can
do?
imagine.
Because they've destroyed my life. You know what I mean? Like, I got nothing to live for. You know, you've
Yeah.
taken everything that I believe for. I don't care if I live or die. Now it's me on you. And I
Yeah.
was in that mindset. I was looking at legislation for the Immigration Act. And because police are Commonwealth assets, right? And because they're targeting Commonwealth assets, that's an act of terrorism. And under the Immigration Act, they can actually get kicked out of Australia. And that would be awesome. But I don't think we'll ever see ourselves happening that. But no, it's the resi care homes, which seats these houses in our suburbs. And the biggest thing is, with any developing mind, you've got impulsive behavior. We see it a lot more nowadays with phones and TikTok and all this kind of stuff, where it's just like information now, accessibility. So it's information and accessibility. How do we remove them out of that? The Katter Party was talking about rural programs that took them outside of that environment. And it's like, you're going to run across hectares of land to steal a beat up Toyota Hilux? I highly doubt it, mate. And everybody in the community is going to know who Hilux that is. So I reckon that is a good idea. Yeah. A good start, at least.
Yeah. You say a good start. How far would you think we need to sort of take this? Like, do you think there's any hope to rehabilitate someone with such a complete and utter lack of compassion?
Well, yeah, that's exactly it. And it's instilling and measuring that complete and utter lack of, because some individuals, because they're groups, they truly believe they're a hardened criminal because they associate themselves with Americanized idols, and they have little gang symbols that they throw. And we can see that because there are people where kids, like some of them have been brought up in very bad environments, and they just don't know which way from wrong because of broken families, and they didn't even know how to operate a microwave. And you just give them a sense of purpose, and then they're back on that path. But it's a small amount, and I think you really have to hold these kids accountable, because we don't have accountability. Like special treatment, conditional release orders, detention as the last result. He's thinking, I can do whatever I want, whenever I want. There's no accountability there. There's no accountability from our law, from our end, and there's no accountability on his end. So how are we meant to help each other out? And sorry, I'm rambling on here, but we see that with the locals at PCYC. There's a 20 percentile non-repeat offender rate, so only 20%, which is pretty poor. But in that rural aspect, we're looking at 70%. So that goes back onto that. What do we do with the people that are lifetime criminals, which beat those percentages, that 70% being rural? So the 30%, what do we do with the 30%? And that's something where we need to collectively come together and then think of something that we can achieve, which really, given the circumstances, you, me, any individual with a sense of passion that wants to effectively make change can. Like being on this platform, going out speaking with victims, working with members of politics, and then effectively making a lot of decent change. To see that statistic drop was just like, I mean, I was a bloke who was headstrong forward for special forces, and I believe that was my life and career. And then all of a sudden, it's this, and it's this effective change. So anybody, I believe everybody is truly intelligent, has the ability to achieve whatever they put their mind to. And I mean, I'm no politician, and we're already making some decent changes. It's just they need to be held accountable. Political leaders actually need to make a change and not be afraid to have negative effects on them for putting harsher penalties on these people.
Exactly. You sent me some newspaper articles here.
Yep.
In the course of some of this, and as you just mentioned, they've ruined your life. They've done in your career as a soldier. I believe you had aspirations to make it to the SAS, mate. Would you like to tell us a little bit about where you were in the military and what you were hoping to achieve?
Yeah, so combat engineer at 3CR in the Australian Defence Force, and I've been doing that since 2020. It was a good career. I had a lot of different opportunities within the Army that sought different avenues of approach, and that was the doors flew right open. from such a young age, I always aspired to serving my country and then what that meant. And the special forces, the ability to help other nations that are in trouble, or the ability to effectively make real change that sets aside from training and utilize the training that I've been taught on the level that sees leadership. And I went down, I was like, okay, sweet, spoke with my chain of command, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to achieve. And they were like, finally, mate, good to see that you're actually going to apply for this. And it was like, whoa, you know, everything started happening so quickly. I was like, sweet, I want to apply for this year to get on selection. They said, well, up, we want you to go to South Australia. I can't specify where. I want you to go to South Australia, and I want you to work within a team and a role to help implement and push out this new capability. So to work with other nations, other armies, and become coherent so that we can all use this new piece of equipment. I was like, sick, done, handshake deal. I'll train for selection at that location. And then when I was done there, that's when I go. And it was this thing that nobody has really done before. And it was exciting. And it aligned me with a great sense of purpose. And I could get up in the morning and I didn't need caffeine. I was like, boom, you know, full of that energy, full of that fire. I felt like everything in life is just like, focus, this is my identity. And to have that ripped away, I was like, you know, what do I do?
So how come you can't return to service? Is it because of the mental trauma or physical debilitation, or what's the story there, mate?
Yeah, so the metal content in my leg, if I remove it, there's a very high chance that I won't be able to fully recover, even with the metal content in there now. So I can't ride a motorbike even. So if I go parachuting or any of that kind of stuff, if that metal breaks, they have to amputate my leg. So I come off a motorbike, I break my leg. Yep, amputation. So the liability there, that if I was to parachute and then crump myself, like, yeah, that's going to do me over. The psychological side of things, yeah, that's another one. That's a big one. But I had the ability to serve in the army, but however, ever since getting there, my aspiration was always to go within the special forces and fight and change whatever it is within myself if there was a flaw, to put myself in that position to be able to be effective in that role.
No, fair enough. So what do you see the future holding for you as a result? You seem pretty active within helping the community here. Are you looking into politics or action groups? Where are you going, mate?
Honestly, right now with everything that's happening, it's trying to be as effective as I can within the community. So yeah, whatever role that opens up within that avenue of approach where I can effectively make positive change, I'm more than happy to do so. But in regards to a plan, I don't really have one, mate.
Alrighty, yeah, just sort of making it up as you go along. And I know you still sort of getting some help for the mental side of things.
Yes, yeah, I am. Sorry, I just read the call. I was for $500,000 payout in the DVA card. Yes, I'm currently working with another legal team right now.
Okay.
Yeah, so the mental health, yes, yeah. Thankfully with the army, they've been really, really supportive. And I say to anybody, they should really join the service at any point in their life just to better themselves and also get the support. And yeah, there is a lot of it. And the mental health team within the Defence Force are awesome stuff. And just seeing them also gave me, because emotion is like a vocabulary. And just as adults, like everybody suppresses things and doesn't fully dive into a lot of traumas.
Yeah.
And just that, yeah, like it enabled me to help out a lot of other people who are going through issues as well. So I give big thanks to the military service for their mental health aspiration, and anybody that is currently serving in the army. I proudly walk down that room every single day seeking help, and don't ever be afraid to go and ask for help, because I was a newborn child when it comes to emotional vocabulary, and I thought I was king crap when it comes to understanding who I was, but I didn't know anything the second I spoke to these people, and I'm glad I did it.
Wow. So in a sense, what hasn't killed you has made you stronger, in a sense.
Yeah. Oh no, it's exactly that. Exactly that.
Yeah. Nice. Excuse me. So with the exception, I mean, obviously we've got a lot of the crime issues, as we brought up in the stats before. It's just one of the many failings I feel within our country at the moment, particularly from a government level. They've destroyed our industries. We should be the most self-sufficient country on the planet, as far as I understand from a military point of view. Like, I mean, a lot of the armaments we're getting are not even from here. Like, I mean, why aren't we manufacturing our own stuff? We have a pretty good historical track record for the development of amazing military technologies and a great many other technologies that subsequently end up overseas because there's no support for it here in this country. We've got the whole element with the COVID lockdowns. I don't know where you stood with that kind of thing, but we've seen some pretty horrific results of what they did, and the more I dive into it, the more it's hard to see that anything they did was with just cause, or with any science behind it even. What kind of point do you feel that the military may have to step in to take control of our horrifically out of control government? Like, I mean, I understand that all enemies, foreign and domestic, and to see criminals straight back out on the street after what they've done to you, surely our military at the higher levels got to be thinking this government needs to go. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. You would think so on if we think on a level back in the day where it comes to strength and power through diversity. But I think the biggest thing right now is coercion, and it's understanding when people go into fear, or whenever issues of extreme magnitude come into effect, it's what are other people doing, and what's the best possible way to analyze and protect ourselves when it comes to this issue. So I don't think there's going to be, especially when it comes to harsh laws, harsh penalties, and going after these individuals, it's very, how would I say this? Almost direct. It's like singling out. And that's the hardest thing, is because now attacking is one thing, because you're getting held to account of your actions. So attacking, going after one group, going after one thing, rather than how do we do this as a whole and how do we all benefit out of this? You're subjective in that side of things. When it comes to, say, instead of the military talking about what are we going in and targeting these people, if we can make a positive effect when it comes to the government as a whole, if we can work better, and the biggest thing is accountability. So if you can make leaders take action, make legislation, make good choices, and be held accountable, I think that's the biggest issue with all these things. You see issues with COVID. We didn't have our government stand up and say, I believe this is right. The person speaking didn't want to be held accountable to be different from what the world was doing. And it's given the platform to have your Trumps, to have your Tates, to have these people that can stand up and say, this is what I believe in, I'm going to be held accountable to it. Because what we're seeing in the past, everything that we've been through is just a global economical issue. And we don't seem to have anybody that can stand outside of that quid pro quo.
Mm. We're seeing the same problems all around the world too, particularly in Western nations, flooding with excessive amounts of migration, crimes through the roof, like all the problems we're experiencing here seem to be the same all over the world, almost as if it was by design. There are, some in the more conspiracy-minded realm who seem to think that there's hopefully a military intervention coming soon, because it seems to me that to put it into context, we've got that pedophile suppression order here, John Howard put through to save 28 names of high-profile people, one of them being a prime minister. They have made themselves exempt from retribution. I can't see how, I'd like to have faith on, we got to get in there and give it a go, but I seriously wonder, can we make change with the current system the way it is? I can't help but feel that they may need to be forcibly removed and thoroughly investigated.
Yeah, well, that's a big thing. Is how are we meant to follow the people if they have issues to which they're not going to address or face? Because we're talking right now, and I've said it the whole time, is accountability. So if you can't be held accountable, you can't give at least one justification to the issue. Or even if you've done something bad and you want to move forward and be effective, I believe in that wholly, right? Because like I said to the kid who hit me, everything that he's done, the 11 pages of criminality, everything that happened, I spoke to him and I said, and I quoted him bloody Mulan from Disney, and it was, the most beautiful flower blooms in adversity. the issues that you go through and everything and all this negativity, no matter what you did, if you can come out of it and show people that you can provide better to the community, that you can be a better person, that's what we like wholly address. And I go back on like forcibly removing, targeting individuals, being very blunt and forward and like a spear, like an attacking force of like, this is an issue, we need to address it, head struck right now, eliminate, deter, never again. Whereas coercion, accountability is the first step into how do we become better people and how do we use this as a platform, not only within Australia, but other nations. Because, I mean, as a society, right, so as the humanity as a whole, we're becoming interstellar species and we're still stuck with small issues like adversity. And all it is literally accountability. So on all levels, if you can have a look at a flaw about like even these charges, it's accountability. But why did they choose to suppress that information? Was it because due to the crime, would it give them personal information like where they lived and these individuals could be targeted? Like there's a broad spectrum when it comes to making these decisions, and we're just left with that very little thing: accountability and coercion. Oh, well, cohesion, not coercion.
Well, the government certainly know a lot about coercion. They've certainly been that way inclined in the last few years, that's for sure, mate. So is there anything else you'd like to sort of add in there, mate? And we might bring Reuben in as well.
Yeah, well, no, I think we've pretty much covered the full spectrum of things. I think it just goes back onto that. I think as a nation, solely as a whole, it's just accountability. We really need to give it the time. We've got people in their job roles to actually actively engage in the community, to be better, to understand Australian values, what people are going through, hardships, really analyze. If you don't have an understanding of something, learn, be better, and then provide to not only Australia, but humanity as a whole.
Nice. Well, you sent me another video here, and we might play that while we bring Reuben into the show.
Done.
A victim of crime says his career aspirations were ripped away after he was seriously injured in a crash last year involving youths driving a stolen ute. The 13-year-old driver received a suspended sentence of 15 months. Karl Boevink says it's not good enough.
Got a male with an open fracture to his left leg.
I will never be able to apply for special forces due to this criminal's behaviour. How many other people have to make a sacrifice as a learning curve for somebody to be better?
Karl says the 13-year-old driver ignored his cries for help and left him trapped under the wheel.
I actually screamed for assistance and he told me to F off.
His injuries were so severe, Karl spent months in a wheelchair and is now being medically discharged from the Defence Force. The young driver's criminal history of theft and assault was detailed today in the Children's Court as the judge sentenced him to 15 months in detention, suspended for a conditional release order of 4 months.
The sentencing today does not reflect keeping the community safe. It doesn't do anything to make sure that this young person isn't reoffending tonight.
The 13-year-old will be placed into a centre in Kelso, the same suburb Karl and his family live in.
They should be out of our community, away from what we use as vehicles, they use as weapons.
If your child's out there offending, do something about it.
Bethany Ross, 7 News.
There you go, mate. So Reuben here is going to be running against Aaron Harper in the seat of Thuringowa, and I thought, you might like to have a bit of a yarn with him. I'm not sure if you've met him before, but here's Reuben. How are you, mate?
Hey, Karl. Hey, Buddy. How you doing?
Awesome, mate. Awesome. Good to see a KAP candidate.
Thank you. Yeah.
I didn't think you'd object.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Karl, great to see you. You're looking really well. Pretty brutal what you've gone through and the very steep road of recovery that you've been on. But yeah, good to see you.
Thanks, mate. Good to see you too.
So, Reuben, tell us a bit about, you were obviously there at the crime rally as well, and I've seen you actively engaged in the community in multiple different ways. So tell us a little bit about why you decided to run with the KRP, mate.
Look, over the last couple of years, I've been getting more concerned, like everyone, with where our government's heading. Federally, state, just the decisions that are being made where that just doesn't seem to make sense or seem to be in the best interest of the community. And I'm just hoping at some point you've got to stop complaining and just put your hand up and say, look, I'm going to have a crack at it and see what we can do for the community.
No worries, mate. So, it was Clinton was sort of going to run in that seat, and then I'm not sure why KAP decided that someone else would possibly fill that seat better, and Clinton is now, where did I put it? It's up here. Clinton has now come out and stated that he will be backing the Liberal Party instead of running himself. I believe there was possibility of him running independent or with another party, but he's decided to jump in behind the Liberal Party now. Can you tell us a little bit more about what happened there, mate?
Look, I've got nothing against Clinton. We're talking 3 to 6. I can't remember how long ago it was when that happened. The two incidents are completely disconnected. In the background, I just want to make sure that there's change and that Aaron Harper doesn't get another stint at it. We've had 9 years of Labor here, and we just need to make sure that changes.
Most certainly. Is there anything? You're in the Thuringowa electorate too, aren't you, Karl?
No. Oh,
No?
sorry. Yeah, for the electorate. Yes,
Kelso.
no, yeah, I am.
Yes,
Yeah, Kelso. Yeah.
No worries. Will you be jumping in and giving Reuben a bit of support there, buddy, or working with him in some regards?
Yeah, most definitely. I truly want KAP to succeed for everything that I stand for, and just discussing with them the values that I recommend that you're going to support as well. The other one that we were pushing quite recently was that castle law. So just more focusing for the people, and I have not seen that anywhere else. And I asked both parties, what is your standpoint on castle law and supporting giving victims power to galvanize their rights? And they couldn't give me an answer. And it was that these parties don't want to hold themselves to what they're talking about or pushing factors that could put themselves in scrutiny. And these guys, the KAP, they're proud to stand up and say, hey, we're for this, we're against this, and step in that limelight. So I really hope that these guys, go all the way.
Yeah,
Thank
cool.
you.
Can one of you or both of you tell us a little bit about what castle law is for those who don't know?
Yeah, so castle law basically gives you the right to protect your property, the people in your family on your property, the right to protect them with any means available. Currently, there is some sort of grey area where you're not allowed to use too much force. So if they've got a knife, you're only allowed to use a knife, it seems. And if you go too far, you're very likely able to get into more trouble than the person committing the crime in the first place. So just bringing back the freedoms to the people so that they can actually protect themselves, which once upon a time that's what we used to have in Australia, and somewhere along the line things have just gone down out of whack and have moved towards the criminals have more rights than the victims.
Karl, you seem to be a little bit upset about something that was said there. Do you want to elaborate, mate?
Well, no, it's exactly that. And it's the criminals have more power than the victims. And it's not just labeled victim, it's Australians that are making Australia better, that are providing to this great nation. We have two great animals that only have the ability to walk forward, mate, and we're stuck here static. And it's because of this, where we're stuck, where the people that are contributing to Australia, making it a better place, are given less rights than the people that are destroying our economy. It doesn't make sense. And this is a crucial piece of legislation that we need in place to galvanize the rights of these people who are providing to this great nation.
Mm-hmm.
From that military point of view, and I've done a bit of martial arts training myself, a knife is a very fast weapon. I'd be inclined to be bringing out a gun. but as they're saying that you can't be bringing out the gun because, I mean, unless you've been trained in how to fight with a knife, like fucking what movie am I thinking of? Under Siege, Tommy Lee Jones and what's his name? I can't believe I've gone blank on the main star of the movie. But the scene I'm talking about is this awesome knife fight scene, and unless you know what you're doing, you're likely to get stabbed. And, it's one of those situations statistically, I think it's, you're more likely to get stabbed by your own knife when producing such a weapon. I can't help but feel that if you've got a gun in your home and somebody comes in with a knife, that's deadly force they're intending to use. I'd be thinking guns should be reasonable. What do you guys think?
I'll let you go first, Reuben.
Currently contentious, I believe. Currently, I believe castle law is outside of the whole thing with guns. Whether or not that is something down the track, like at the end of the day, you're trying to protect your family. You have people that have invaded your home that are seeking to do harm on potentially your children or your property. It would, and that's a very US type requirement. It would be nice, but I don't think it's currently an avenue that they can push down at the moment, one step at a time.
Yeah, it's exactly that. And it's how do we push in legislation that is appropriately aligned with Australian values that differentiate the statistics that we're going to possibly receive from Americanized values like school shootings and things like this. And if in fact, say down the future when it comes to like the weapons and being able to protect your house, because it's fair game. Like I had 8 people in the car. They're not one lone ranger coming into your house going, how are you going, sir? I'm about to take your stuff. Let's have a fair fight. There's an officer here to mention how we're going to correctly do this. No, it's somebody's literally gone for your life, and people have died in their homes protecting their assets. And having a weapon, I believe if we were to go down the approach of, say, using firearms within castle law, there should be, because right now to get your weapons license, it's for like shooting, sport shooting and hunting. I believe for like farmer. If it is for self-defense or home, for that, I believe that we should be given courses, and so that we don't injure other Australians, because a lot of us live in residential areas, and if you've got somebody's coming up at you and you're firing blank forward, you're going to go into somebody's bedroom, and it could be a child, and next, you got multiple injuries from just one occasion. So I believe that if we were to go down that, we could adopt policies that could take us out of the statistical limelight from America. From what I'm thinking right now, don't aim your gun directly. The individual breaking your house has to be within 3 meters. Aim the gun down, so you're causing limb injury. You're not causing facial shots. You're not aiming to intent or harm. You're aiming to demobilize the individual that's in your house, and therefore, we can enact law on that individual.
And that was Steven Seagal. Thanks, guys, for letting me know.
I was like, I'm reading that. I was like, this guy's spot on. There you go. You got your own Google AI coming in. It's like, gotcha.
Yeah, that's it. They're people who like to comment are just as helpful as bringing content as I am. So, great crowd of people out there. I love them all.
Yeah, no, that's good.
But yeah, I don't think there should be any problem with proper gun safety. That's a simple thing. Like we see what's happening with Alec Baldwin. I think gun safety is a pretty high fucking on the priority list for a lot of people. I think and we shouldn't be giving guns to just about anyone. But at the end of the day, I think we should have the right to defend ourselves. And I think the idea of a Second Amendment style situation where you have the right to bear arms and defend and protect yourself should be definitely something we as a country be looking at. Because truth, that's just
along with the other freedoms like freedom of speech as well.
Yeah,
one of the other big ones.
I need to do this correctly. What?
Yeah, me too. I'm getting. I need to have a mirror or something.
Backwards. It's always backwards.
Yeah.
It's not a mirror. Yeah.
No, that's exactly that.
Did you see there was a incident? I think it was in Brisbane. A gentleman in his 70s nearly got his arm hacked off during a home invasion, or he ended up managing to flip the script and be able to attack the people that were invading his home, and someone got their arm partially hacked off, and he ended up getting investigated for using too much force. I don't know where that case ended up going. Do you remember that one at all?
No, I haven't heard that
it was
one.
probably last year. It was probably in his, I'm going to say 60s or 70s, and you're completely out of, getting on in your years to try and make sure that you can defend yourself, and then be able to have the police then go and start investigating you for using too much force, which is what we're trying to fight against.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we have, we've seen the callous nature of what happened here to Karl, but we've also got this, elder abuse scenario where we've got people specifically targeting elderly people because they are frail and unable to defend themselves. Like, that's a moral judgment where you are literally picking weaker prey. Like it's just obscene.
I've heard of women, elderly women, coming out of the grocery store with a full load, and then having to try and around 5 o'clock and try to make a decision on whether or not to go to the car, on either is it safe, and that as a society that we've gone to that state is just unbelievable.
Definitely. I mean, I've been on police ride-alongs as well, and I can't help but feel that there are not enough police on other nighttime. Having worked in the mainstream and whatnot, we were on a police ride-along. I believe there were 4 cars available of a nighttime. One of them was previously engaged. 3 of them attempted to, basically block off all of a shopping center to try and get to these, youth thugs. They managed to achieve the goal, but it's all cars on one area. Another example, we went to a bottle shop. I won't say which one, and while that shop was being done over, where the cops were investigating, I got cameras on it, and then you hear over the the radio at the time, Struth, they've just done another one over. By the time they got to the second one, a third one was done over. There's not enough cops on at night time, but there's plenty out there handing out fines like lollies. I can't help but think the priorities are a little bit askew here.
Yeah, the at night, the stories that I've heard just regarding the police running away from the criminals and having to head back to the main base because they're under attack, with rocks being thrown, cars being damaged, rammed, fearing for their life, and then not feeling that they have the ability to stop the criminals from continuing their rampage around Townsville. Just seems to have gone completely out to lunch. Like once upon a time, the good guys chase the bad guys, not the other way around.
Exactly.
And that's
it's all good to have a helicopter up there costing us about $500,000 every time it flies up or something to that effect, and that's all good. We spotted the crims. Where are the cops? Oh, sorry, that they were off doing something else. We can't get to it.
Or they're holding back because they don't want to engage until they run out of fuel, or they've got a safe time that they can engage. Yeah.
And we've got that no chase law situation. They're not allowed to chase them. Like, what the hell? Like, how many people are potentially going to die because they didn't intervene? Exactly.
Well, and that's that harsh reality of the situation is, how do we tackle this, and how do we do this so that it's we're not just targeting one aspect and then we're at a loss on another, and it's very, very hard to deal with. So I think it's a resource-based thing, yes, where we are lacking the amount of force, or maybe it's a particular force that we need that can tackle these individuals specifically, like a task force. Maybe that's designed to dealing with these criminals and then changing the laws surrounding what these kids do. And it's, well, like I go to the Terrorist Legislation Act, they're targeting Commonwealth assets, mate. So there's given the current situation that we're stuck with, it's very, very, very hard to deal with. And I mean, the police themselves can only act within the confines of the law, and it's the legislation that needs change. And then we'll be able to see that trickle effect so that we can make positive outcomes for what we're dealing with.
Definitely. So, Reuben, what else do you want to bring to the table here as far as your candidacy goes, mate?
Yeah, so a few areas. One of the big ones in terms of Australia as a nation is around energy and energy security, attempting to get back to globally competitive energy. We've seen just a slow increase of power prices over as the push for 100% renewables has been ongoing, or the slow push towards that, and the impact on our society has been huge. So currently, as we've decided that it makes sense to send all our coal to China, or a good portion of it, where they go and make solar panels and wind turbines, and then they send them back to us. And all of the jobs, all of the skills, we're basically outsourcing that. We're coming back with this equipment that is then going to need to be replaced in 10 to 20 years, and or sooner, depending on what the environment it's in and how it lasts. So I have a strong feeling that really starts to impact our ability to be competitive, and we will become chained to these other countries that will have a long-term impact on our society. We'll effectively be being milked as a society by these global interests.
Yeah. And it actually brings me something to my mother. My mother actually pointed this out the other day. We now have wind droughts. Now, last I checked, drought was something to do with water. Can't help but feel this terminology here is just as retarded as the whole concept of, let's rely on unreliable energy, But seriously, wind droughts is their new catchphrase for when the wind farms don't do what they're supposed to do. It's it just goes on and on and on. The stupidity never seems to end. And give me a second, I'll just.
And if you're wanting to go to like wind and solar, you really need to make sure you've got enough storage. And if you have a look at the numbers for the storage projects that are planned, there's about 0.5 terawatt hours in the pipeline if they all go ahead. And 0.5 terawatt hours is about 16 hours of our I believe of the Australian, or at least the Eastern grid. So pushing it, I think. If there's wind droughts, you're going to be struggling to balance everything out. And I think we just really need to rethink about that. Stop demonizing baseload. Having some isn't really an issue, but having all of our eggs in a couple of different baskets in terms of our supply chain and where the equipment's coming from could be quite detrimental to us in the long run.
And here's an example of the current wind drought. So this is, the aneroid, which sounds a bit like a hemorrhoid, energy map here, where you can see the current wind energy generation, and green is from 0, so fuck all, to greater than to about 30%, which is the majority. We have a large portion here that are not even utilized. This is what we're investing our technology in. Like, looking at this, over half of the stuff in the south here is not even being utilized, and those that are being utilized, majority up to 30%, so they're just turning, and we've got one here that's running above 30%, and we have to come all the way up here to Cairns to find the one in the whole country that's producing more than 60%. So I don't really want to be relying on this as a wind source, as an energy source, because these wind droughts are clearly a problem, and it's amazing how often I look at this and that's what the map looks like. You've
got a geographical issue too, so for you to send the power from North Queensland all the way down to Sydney and Melbourne, you're going to be struggling. There's a gentleman on X that does a weekly summary where he attempts to theoretically show what's possible if we scale the amount of wind, the amount of solar, the amount of PV solar on people's roofs, and it's a good example of potentially what's possible and how much storage you would need to make it work. And he gets to around, say, 95% of everything working reasonably. I think and the issue associated with that is he balances it across the entire grid. So you're not really looking at a state issue, and so he's currently assuming that it can balance everything across from the north to the south, and then it'll all be great. But it doesn't quite work like that. You need to go HVDC to really transfer your voltage, your power down the coast, and that hasn't really been put in place at all.
And I like that approach because it's a multifaceted approach, especially with today's energy issue. Is a lot of people don't understand why we're in energy crisis, and it is as technology continues to develop, we're using higher energy outputs. So, like you said, this is the start point. We need to have more industry and energy and a variety of different energy sources so that we can help tackle this this curve.
I'm all for the storage idea, but one of the problems I find is they seem to be burning houses down too, and some elements of the CFA, not everybody, but some firefighters are actually fully against what's going on with the rollout of renewables because of the fires they're starting. And recently we've seen there in Victoria where one of the wind turbines caught fire. We've seen cases in America where one wind turbine goes up, the whole lot goes up. The fire, from the melting plastics and whatnot, land onto the grassland underneath, start a bushfire, which is a wonderful idea up here in Queensland. Could you imagine what would happen if one of those wind farms, it only takes one to start dropping shit all over the place, catch onto some eucalyptus trees, and bang, off we go.
That's exactly
I can't help but feel this thing hasn't been thought out well enough. I can't help but feel some of the technological advancements have not advanced far enough, particularly in the case of batteries catching fire and whatnot and burning people's homes down. It's one of the reasons I'm not putting batteries on my home at this particular juncture in time. So I've spoken to a few firefighters and they're like, I wouldn't even put solar panels on my house. That shit catches fire too. So I can't help but feel we need better safety measures.
That's exactly it. Safety measures are one of the biggest principles, but like any product placement, you have to have consumer reviews. And this is the harsh negative of this new technology is we're actively trying to roll it out in a competitive market to tackle this energy crisis that we're finding. And it's how do we deal with wind turbines that are catching on fire? How do we better the technology so that this doesn't occur? How do we, like you said, put better safety measures in? And it's exactly principles like this. It's having a discussion where you can get through people on a Zoom chat together, or even better would be in a place where legislation can effectively make change, and then tackling this and then putting in the relevant legislation so that we can advance Australia whilst maintaining a level of safety.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on nuclear?
Awesome. I'm definitely open to nuclear. There's a good presentation. It was done at JCU. There was probably about 5 or 6 different environmentalists and I believe engineers and maybe an economist in there as well. And they were raising the alarm on the concern with all the wind turbines, pretty much down the Great Dividing Range from the top to the bottom. All the proposed projects that will be impacting a lot of virgin, untouched, maybe not national parks, but at least on the edge of national parks. And it's not just the exact location of putting where the turbine goes, it's the effective highway that you've got to put in place to actually get the turbine blades and the equipment up to those locations, which really is overlooked by a lot of the Greens and what that impact will be to the natural environment. Nuclear, on the other hand, is just a very dense energy source. So we've got heaps of uranium in Australia. There is a lot of opportunity there in terms of effectively an unlimited energy source. If we can be involved with that, the development of that technology, I think that would be just great for Australia.
Bloody hell. And we talk about like nuclear waste on that topic as well. And it wasn't too long ago that I saw that the activated uranium from the nuclear waste is turned into batteries using synthetic crystals, enabling to make batteries that could essentially charge your phone for 10,000 years. It'd be good to see if anybody has any of that information I could share and their progress on that. So yeah, steering away from the waste from nuclear, definitely we keep using a substance or a source or anything in regards to technology, we can find means around it so we can make it useful.
But to be able to actually start developing any type of the technology, we really need to lift the ban and lift the ban, at least get it to a point where
Yeah.
it's at the free market and we can start to have some discussions on what we want to do. There's some really cool little companies out of the US that are developing effectively microreactors at I think it's 20 megawatt level. So pretty small and compact, like effectively a shipping container. Some pretty cool technology there that they're pushing on with, and we've just got our hands tied here down in Australia, not even an ability to try and push the envelope on what's possible.
So yeah, just looking that up, we've got radioactive diamond batteries, a cure for nuclear waste. And diamonds, you know, I mean, anybody's looked into it knows it's an artificially inflated market. There's actually enough diamonds here for everybody to have, you know, a cup full in their hand. Not to mention it's basically compressed carbon. And, you know, as disturbing as some people may find this, you can actually have your loved ones cremated and turned into a diamond these days because it's just compressed carbon. So you can burn just about anything, create the carbon, compress it, and create a diamond. So we've got a relatively renewable source because carbon's everywhere, you know. So that seems like a pretty interesting idea. Something else I wanted to point out, if you guys haven't seen it, wind farms, a man-made disaster. Here's a lovely footprint of just one of the turbines created. You see how much bushland is created. This one, documentary, and I'll put a link here in the chat for people to have a look at that too. If you haven't seen it, it's an older video that I did a while back. We've got seeing a fracture in the environmental industry where, you know, the Greens parties in particular who are funded by these projects won't say anything bad about it because they're getting the money, you know, but then you've got the actual environmentalists who give a shit about the environment are adamantly opposing to it because of where they're putting it. And like you were saying, Reuben, you know, like sticking them along the Great Dividing Range, bulldozing shitloads of forests, it's nuts. And particularly when you've got Plebiscite running around clubbing koalas over the back of the head to euthanize them because we've got to make way for these things, while at the same time saying koalas are an endangered species due to the recent bushfires. And we've got things that are also most likely going to cause more bushfires on top of it. I can't help but feel it's all friggin' madness. But the other amazing part towards the end of this doco is there's an environmental scientist who speaks to nuclear energy and how much safer it is than it used to be. Of course, we were all scared to death of nuclear radiation as children. You know, a lot more research has been done regarding such radiation, and she was basically saying the safety protocols is just so much higher than it used to be. The chances of something going wrong, you know, it'd only be down to neglect.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to see if I could find the gentleman that I saw, just to share the name.
Yeah, definitely check that out. Lots of different videos you can check out here because we talk about all sorts of things on the North Queensland Freedom Network. But yeah, this radioactive diamond thing seems like a pretty interesting idea. Did you say something about, was it diamonds or did you say something else just before?
Synthetic diamonds, so that's synthetically
synthetics.
made.
Yeah,
which looks like that. Yeah,
it's pretty cool. I think one of the aspects that they made was one of them. I think it was Elon Musk was following this, and he could do it inside of, I think it was equivalent to a AA battery.
Oh wow!
Never imagine that. Yeah, your TV remote. And I think in that sense, imagine getting issued, like you got to purchase a phone, and there's no longer the battery logo on it.
Yeah.
And you just get given this phone, and then it lasts that long that you're great, you know?
Be great for us on the consumer end, but I'm reckoning all those people who are running phone companies that depend on the fact that they've sealed the battery into the phone so that you can't replace it and stuff, so that, you know, planned obsolescence is in mind, you know, might be a little upset about it. But I think that, you know, and again, actually brings up the point of how planned obsolescence. I don't understand why the green movement isn't more focused on that. You know, I mean, for instance, you go out and you spend $40 on a fucking trash bag, otherwise known as a show bag, down at the show. Your kids get that crap home and it's in the bin before the day's out because it just doesn't last. You know, it's garbage.
Yeah.
We're so much of a throwaway society, and the quality of our products is degrading by the day. I mean, I've got t-shirts in the drawer. Yeah, there's a couple of holes in them, but they're still good. They're still good. You know, the missus might disagree, but I'm telling you, they're still good. You know, but I've had those things for 20 plus years. I've got t-shirts I bought 5 years ago that don't last, that are in the bin already.
you could make the same argument about washing machines and dryers. Once upon a time, they used to last 20 plus years. They were quite basic, but they just last. They were made in Australia.
Yep.
The
replacement parts.
Exactly, simple amount of parts. But where we've gone is everything is getting imported. The parts are basically make it too expensive to be able to repair. We've become dependent on these other countries, and they've nearly got it to a fine art where it'll go out of warranty the last 6 months, a year later, and then you'll be the sucker that has to go buy a new one because you've reached end of life, which is a brilliant business model, but it's not good for the environment and it's not good for Australian society.
That's exactly it. It's a brilliant business model. And it's a lot easier because that pushes more on insurance. So product insurance, we can also make the same argument against vehicles and the quality of vehicles design now. And it just goes back on, it's a brilliant, it is a brilliant business model because they're getting, for a replacement, that's new goods out. That actually boosts the product on the stock market because that's more purchases. And it just keeps that side of things flowing where it's left us feeling that we're stuck with subscription assets. So things like cars, things like phones, and things like washing machines aren't something that is something that you stick with for life. It is. So I think it is a great thing that we should get down this avenue, like you said, the greens, where we go into these renewables and we start pushing things that we can focus more on not plain obsolescence and get us in the mindset of taking appreciation and the value for what things are and using them in a lifetime.
Being more self-sufficient here in Australia, and to try and get back to where we were. It's a shame how many skills we've managed to lose over the years, and China is just eating our lunch in like so many different areas of manufacturing. It's quite embarrassing from where we were once upon a time.
And it's insulting. It doesn't take anybody can go on their phone right now, and everybody has a phone. And what's one of the first things that pop on Instagram is punters politics. It doesn't take anybody.
Yeah.
You don't have to go to university to understand that we're getting done over. So we're all aware of it. And the more that they're not getting held accountable to this, it's like we're getting spit on the face, mate. They're treating us like we're idiots. And we're well aware of how we're getting hoodwinked.
Oh, yeah. I'm sick to death of replacing shit. I just had to replace a hot water system. There's $2,500 gone. Just had to replace a washing machine a couple of months ago. There's another grand and a bit gone. I just had to replace my sound card for this machine here. That was when purchased new, about $2,000 unit. I downgraded just because I couldn't afford it.
So for vehicles, there's some legislation I think around spare parts that I think it's got to be 20 years spare parts. I don't know if there's any specific legislation around costing of spare parts or really putting
for cars.
it on
I believe it's 7. I think it's they only have
7 years.
Have 7 years for car parts, which I think is nowhere near enough. I mean, and again, better batteries. There's your sales point for the electric car, because as far as I'm concerned, the electric car is a bad idea because as soon as that battery's fucking gone, it's useless. I had a friend who had a hybrid for 10 years, and the battery went 10 years later. Surprise, surprise. But it costs more to replace the battery than it would be to buy the car with the battery in it. If he replaced that battery, he was going to lose about $3,000 on resale with the brand new battery installed. So what's the motivation? It's just like it again, throwaway society, going to throw these cars away because it costs too much to put a new battery in them. It's a write-off.
So in terms of electric cars, so those cars specifically, I'm guessing we're talking like a Prius, sorry.
I can't remember I think it might have been something to that effect.
So one of the big things is, again, safety systems, cooling systems for any type of battery system, trying to make sure that you're thermally managing the battery system so that you get the most life out of it. Some companies are safer than others. Some companies have better cooling and thermal management systems than others. I personally have a Tesla Model 3, and we got one to really test out what's this going to look like. How is this going to impact society? And I found it to be quite, as a car, excellent. However, range is a huge impact and a huge issue associated with Australia for the distances that we have to drive. So it's definitely not for anyone. And I'm completely against trying to force anything on anyone. You should have the free choice to make the decisions that you want and what you want to drive. You need a big diesel to tow big equipment, go for it. You know, it should be completely free choice. But the Tesla specifically, they've got extremely good thermal management, and their battery lives, in theory, are getting quite good. So in the overall group of Tesla Model 3s that one of the apps that I follow looks at, they're looking at probably 150,000 kilometer range. But of battery life before you've got to look at recycling and replacing the battery system. How that'll actually go, we will see. But
I'm we're the guinea pigs.
I'm the guinea pig, and I'll be the guinea pig for you guys. You can see how it goes. But if you ever want to go for a drive, and it's pretty fun. Like, they're pretty fun.
Yeah, I'm down.
Because
we might have to go and do it. We'll do a Tesla doco on it. We'll chuck the camera in. We'll go for a drive, and we'll see what it's like. And then we'll catch up 10 years later and see if it's got fire.
See if it's still got,
still got. And then because I got a VE Series 2 Holden Ute V8, mate, and we'll go up against a Tesla with that one and see whose battery has to get changed over the next 10 years. Well, that's the biggest thing. Is like these electric vehicles. I think the biggest push while I was even considering the hybrid, but instead I got the diesel, was the price of those batteries, mate. At the end of the day, I'm trying to save money because the money coming out of the nozzle is pretty damn expensive, especially on the V8. So on a societal thing, at the end of the day, I'm trying to save as much money as I can, filling up and going to these great distances. I just don't think the technology now reflects what we need in Australia, and we should let all the other US countries, Europe countries, where they invented the stop-start, another ridiculous thing that we don't need in Australia, they can run that. They can invest and enhance the property, because when the Teslas first came out, they're exploding because the lithium batteries, a rock would skiddle boop into the battery, and then boom. And then how do they overcome using extreme engineering methods of today's current society? Titanium plate.
You
know, like,
nice
it's just
cheap.
Nice and cheap, you know. And I just don't think we're equipped in Australia, like you said, Reuben, to tackle these things. I don't see a Tesla Model 3 telling a camper van caravan to go out on the weekend.
Not a chance.
We've
still got a Prado.
If it does, you won't get far.
Maybe the Cybertruck. But
we've still got a Prado, but my wife was hating to drive it. I was hating to drive it. So it's a hard sell. Once you try one out, and autopilot is actually getting pretty impressive as well. And where that's
shit
heading,
out of me.
It should, but it's pretty impressive. If you have a look at some of the videos in the US of like the latest versions, they'll be driving for like half an hour through back streets. They'll just put a location in, and it'll be able to turn across traffic safely. It's crazy how far it's come. Visual only too, like just using vision.
Well, I back that because I got the D-Max now, brand new D-Max, and that has lane assist and all those kinds of things. It can be a pain in the ass. I had to drive it around in Sydney, constantly e-braking. But you're doing those long distance travels, and you got that lane assist and stuff. It's a dream. It's easy. It's nice, but I think again, and a lot of headaches for the people that are doing daily commute just to their job.
Well, there are downsides to those kind of technologies. Like, so, as a truck driver, we've got that, or sensors in the front to let you know if someone's there. I mean, I don't know. I've lost count of how many times that thing's gone off saying car, slams the fucking brakes, and there's nothing there.
Not
to mention when the ibis flies in front of you. That would be fucking scary, and even, like the car in front, it moves out to the next lane because it's going to turn or whatnot. The sensor detects that there's something in front. Again, brakes go on, So, I mean, my faith in this technology is, from personal experience, is somewhat shaken.
It's only as good as the AI behind it. And the future AI issues that we have in terms of what's the impact going to be on our society. It's crazy. Like there's a Lex Friedman has a really interesting podcast where he talks with I don't know, some sort of AI gentleman, and he basically says there's a 99.99% chance that we're going to be that it's not going to end up well for humanity. The rate they're going, you got all these big corporations that are pushing their specific version of AI, and some of them don't even think that humanity's worth saving. That they called, I think it's. They think that we're just the next step in the evolutionary chain, and it's inevitable, and to humanity get out of the road. So those type of people, I would be very concerned with being in control of the AI development.
Well, I've seen Terminator, and we know how that ends.
Yeah.
But what they don't have in Terminator is Elon Musk with Neuralink, mate. So we could all get linked up, and then we'll be, thinking rapidly, quick, and meeting at the same standard as these robots, mate. Engineered humans.
Yeah, and then you got a fucking virus that goes into your own brain and you're fucked. Like, you
can disconnect it, So you got that.
But
that'd be pretty. Well, you like the fight scenes with the knife. Imagine now we keep the same castle law. You download that knife fighting ability, and maybe French as well.
Like
so you can
Neo in the Matrix.
Full of Matrix.
Just download it, and then there you go. Yeah,
it's an interesting concept, but I'll tell you what, you first.
Have you seen the Neuralink, the gentleman who's fully paralyzed, who was using a computer? The first gentleman to actually. That is unreal. Like, you imagine being able to be fully paralyzed and being able to then start to control a computer, and like they're hoping, like the goal is to go from there to be able to get him to walk through thought. So that was the I think he was playing maybe Pong or something like that on the screen. They had some issues with, I think, the electrodes going into the brain, starting too much movement occurring. But as a first crack at it, the technology's a game changer for people that were previously just stuck with paralysis. Yeah, that gentleman.
I also read an extensive report into how this could, we're using, because it's electronic nerve for the brain-derived neurotropical functions, and that electronic firing can actually stimulate things that fight against things like Alzheimer's. So the platform for this is a huge spectrum.
I find it very fascinating, and particularly in the instance here where this fella, can't control his body and whatnot. I mean, obviously I'm a bit concerned, but it's developed significant flaws. But
the flaws they were associated, I believe, with the actual the length of them going in, and they were able to kind of there you go, slipped out of the brain.
Device's tendrils slipped out of his brain. Wow,
pretty crazy. But
it's insane, hey? But like any new technology, this is very, very new, and we're going to have to continue to push on this to become better as a society.
Yeah.
If you think about even on the rockets, have you seen the latest engine, the latest rocket engine that he's got going?
No.
It is unreal. Like that. Those, I think, is it the Raptor Gen 3 or something like that? It's so clean. There's a picture out there where it shows the comparison of the Gen 1, I think, to like the Gen 3, and it's so clean. Like the improvement in their technology is just unreal. Like, I would love to see technology like that being developed here in Australia, and defense is one part of that, which ideally we would be investing part of our budget in developing technology locally in Australia, and that just seems to be getting missed out, and that they just seem to go to the big global defense players instead of using some local know-how in Australia and trying to push things forward. That's right.
Yeah, definitely. It's look, as a sci-fi fan, and RoboCop obviously comes to mind now that Waldo's placed it there. They're definitely going to need to be some significant legislation in place to prevent police officers being used as guinea pigs in RoboCop projects. You could imagine the same thing happening to soldiers, perhaps, just to, keep it in context. As I understand it, you kind of, when you join into specific services, you kind of, handing yourself over to the government. So God knows what will happen. I remember attending a story for 7 years ago here in Townsville of soldiers who were medically experimented on with vaccines, and it caused all sorts of fucking problems. How long before we end up with Daleks and Cybermen? As Waldo's pointed out, for the sci-fi nuts out there like me who know exactly what he's talking about.
I think one of the biggest things there is the individuals that gave the consent to do it, because at the end of the day, they weren't abducted, and it's like they're more than happy and willing. So
you've seen RoboCop,
yeah. I've seen
I don't know that he was happy.
He
and
was
willing.
not happy. Yeah, no, he was overtaken. But no, that's the biggest thing. Hey? It's like finding
and
that.
then Universal Soldier. There's another fucking example of it. The situation going on.
Yeah, exactly that. But I mean, even in today's given society where we're going down, we're catering to the minute people. We're being very soft and gentle, even in our legislation. I think I don't think they're going to equip some sort of person beyond belief to employ this tactic to disrupt our society, and then for these people to be held accountable if they're found out tinkering with the mind of an individual. They can't even be held accountable. The people in power to changing legislation for harsher penalties on young people. I don't think they're gonna. I don't think they're gonna go down that avenue.
And after the last few years, mate, I wouldn't put anything past these people.
Yeah,
I always remain extremely skeptical and highly dubious of the intentions of our politicians.
And you should be.
I just think they're weak, honestly. I think they're very, very weak. Because
I think in a lot of cases, yes.
Yeah. Well,
in a lot of cases,
you put them on
right.
a platform. Yeah, you put them on a platform, and that all they're trying to do is maintain that integrity of whatever the issue is at that time, so that they can be liked and then put on. They don't want to say something that goes against or supports a minority group that is, say, right wing, because it'll take away their votes. Everything's all votes and teetering to votes, and it's weakness. It comes from a place of fear and a lack of accountability. So when are we going to get a good, strong majority of people into change? Yeah.
Well, hopefully this time round. So as we see numbers, exactly, the Liberal and Labor Party dropping, it only stands to reason that sooner or later we'll have some more, smaller parties and independent people coming in. So, All right, gentlemen, I think we've had a pretty good yarn. Is there anything anybody'd like to add before we move on? Continue the rest of our day.
No.
Oh, there
Thanks,
was one
Sue.
question.
Yeah, if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
So we've got would Qatar consider tariff sanctions to support locally made and Australian goods?
So personally, I'm not speaking on behalf of the party. Some countries where you have a free market, a true free market, and people are actually competing evenly, then you can start to talk about it. But when you have a country like China, where the entire government is actually helping to drive down the costs of goods, and you're not actually competing on a fair market, this starts to make sense. Like the push for open trade, the free trade agreements that seems to be pushed across different countries. There's definitely issues with that. We should be trying to encourage putting in place policies that encourage things made locally here in Australia, and trying to make sure that those skills aren't lost. What that exactly looks like, I'm not 100% sure, but that's what we should be trying to drive, to bring back self-sufficiency to Australia. Technology development, like bringing that back here.
Now, doesn't that go up against the Lima Declaration, which was the reason we have all these problems in the first place?
I'm not 100% sure on that, the Lima Declaration.
You might want to have a look at that one, because that's where it all started coming in. It's come from the UN.
Okay.
That was back in the 80s. I think it might have been 84, if memory serves correctly. I may be wrong on the date. But yeah, I mean, and I believe you probably find the Katter Party's generally pretty good on it, because I remember seeing a video quite some time ago with Bob standing there in Parliament ripping them a new arsehole, telling them all about how this free trade shit has been good for everybody but Australia. We've been totally rolled by this ridiculous idea.
A lot. It's affected a lot of industries that I think he's mentioned around cotton, wool, all our agricultural type industries, and how they've been impacted by those types of changes.
73. Shane says it was 73. There you go.
But over the last 20 years, we've just really seen just a decline in so many industries. One of my first jobs, actually, I was down working on SO2 gas reduction down in Victoria for one of the aluminium smelters there, Point Henry from memory. And it was one of the last projects that was going on. We were going to increase the stack. Dilution is the solution. So drop the SO2 up higher so it spreads out more, and you get lower concentrations down at ground level. That ended up getting shelved, and the whole plant ended up getting shut down. So like our various industries have just been slowly getting gutted one by one in Australia. I think Cadbury's the next one that's contemplating moving things offshore. We can't even make chocolate. Sacrilege.
That factory was down the road from my place in Victoria for donkey's years, but I had to go to Tasmania to go on a tour because that one wasn't open to the public.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just the idea that factory that's been there for as long as I can remember is going to go. That's disturbing. I mean, of course, we lost Ford and Holden.
That's right.
Yeah, I can't get any
after they gave them a bunch of cash, over multiple years. Like, shouldn't there have been strings attached to say, all right, we're starting to own the IP within Australia because we're putting money in. Same with Qantas, same with Virgin. If you're bailing these companies out, Australia should be owning it, and you should be able to go, yep, we're starting to have a big share in this company. We want a rejig of the leadership and be able to bring it back to Australian. It just seems crazy that we just let our entire industry die there after pumping so much cash into it.
And that's a huge thing there, because even just for parts, like you can't get even parts for these classic cars anymore. And then if you want to say with today's technology, refabricate or repurpose parts to fit to that vehicle, you're not allowed to just because of the product and the licensing surrounding it, which is sad.
Yeah, definitely. Out of madness. Do we have any other questions from the audience out there, please? Otherwise, we'll wrap this one up. Voice is a bit sore, as stated up above. Do need to rest it. And,
you've been doing great. You've been doing great.
I'm surprised I haven't grabbed this bucket and filled it yet. So, the first time on North Queensland Freedom Network, me chucking me guts out into a bucket. I was, concerned that it may come to pass, but I don't want to push it much further. So everybody's starting to say their thanks. I think we can pretty much call that a day. Look, thanks heaps, guys, for coming in. Karl, it's amazing, you coming out telling your story after what's happened, even on that crime rally, to come out in the wheelchair just days after the incident. It's an amazing act of bravery. And like I said, that footage is here available for you. If you ever want a copy of it, happy to pass it on to you, mate. Everything that I shot that day. And Reuben, thanks heaps. Not a problem, man. And thanks heaps for coming on, Reuben, sharing a little bit about the KAP candidate for the Thuringowa situation. Best of luck to you, mate. Hopefully it all works out, because the last thing we need is bloody Aaron Harper to do any more damage to this town.
Yeah.
Oh, my
exactly
cue.
I wonder if you can do that. Handshakes. Can you do handshakes in the middle of that? I'll try to go a bit higher. There we go.
It's a bit weird. But one more question. Would KAP endorse voting for local judges?
Is that done anywhere? I think in America they do that, don't they? But there's some sort of voting. There'd be a benefit to it, wouldn't there? That you'd be able to hold them accountable. Yeah, I'm just not sure on the specifics on what would be possible. Self-reliance in manufacturing. Yeah.
If World War anything comes, ships, torpedo, Australia needs self-reliance in manufacturing. Yeah, that's it. We do need a lot more self-reliance when it comes to our military, I believe.
Yeah. We are such a small, like not a small country, but we're so separate from all of our Western colleagues. If we'd be quite easily, I think, to strangle our supply lines from other countries that actually care about us, and pretty crazy that how reliant we've become on countries that could potentially end up deciding to invade us if it got into it.
Self-sustainability, stronger Navy, stronger Air Force. Done.
Yeah, definitely. That's it. Definitely self-sustainability. We need the ability to produce everything ourselves, and with the amount of resources we have here in this country, I don't understand why we're not. Makes no sense. But anyway, guys, thank you all very much. Thanks all to everybody who's watching. Much appreciated. Don't forget to share this stuff around. Give it the likes and the thumbs up and the subscribes. You know all this shit. I tell you all the time. You should know what to do. And yeah, definitely consider becoming a Patreon, because it'd be great to one day. This is my main job. Put the trucks aside and focus in on this shit. It'd be great. No worries. Thanks heaps for coming on, guys. Till next time.
Thanks for having me.
No worries, mate. Not a problem. Where's my outro?